Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Intercultural Insiders. My name is John McGraw, and I help expats and newcomers feel confident in their new country in less time and pain. And I am the founder of Hiyaku Coaching, which is dedicated to helping you create your pathway to success in a new culture. And let me state the purpose of this show, again, Intercultural Insiders, is to share the stories of people with intercultural experiences. Now, if you're feeling isolated or lost, perhaps you can hear something from myself or from the guests' experiences that could help you, even if it's just to remind you that you're not alone. So, if I want you to take away anything from Intercultural Insiders, it's the encouragement to that rising to the challenge of adapting to another culture can help you to become a better version of yourself. So before we get into the full contents of our show, I'd like to just give a bit of details about the roadmap, the plan for today's show. So for those of you who missed part 1, I will be introducing Liliana Nakamura, and I'll be highlighting some of the important points, most important points from the interviews. We'll, of course, watch the interview today. There will be time, of course, while the interview is going on for you to type your questions and comments in the chat. And Liliana should be attending so that she can also comment and answer the questions while the interview is going on. There will be some time at the end. The interview itself runs just a little over 15 minutes. So there will be time at the end for some discussion, perhaps some opportunity to answer questions there, but you don't have to wait until after the interview to ask or type your questions in the chat. And I will be talking a little bit about a group coaching program for newcomers to Canada that is going to be launching through Hiyaku Coaching. So make sure to stick around for that. That's quite exciting. Now, let's just go through a little bit of an introduction for those of you who missed part 1 of Liliana Nakamura. She is an HR consultant and mentor for newcomers to Canada, and she has a multicultural background, which we covered in detail in last episode. And by the way, if you want to see part 1 of the interview, I encourage you to go to Hiyaku Coaching on YouTube at, youtube.com/@Hiyaku Coaching to see that episode. And of course, all of the other episodes of Intercultural Insiders. Now, Liliana has years of experience working in Argentina, Japan, and Canada. So she has a valuable experience and valuable perspective on adapting to different cultures. And as you all know, or most of you know, she is also my wife. I want to spend some time highlighting some of the key points from today's portion of the interview. So, one thing that Liliana mentions in particular is the importance of a plan. This is based off of her previous experiences in Japan, which she covered in part 1. And I want to mention that this is something that I help my clients with, developing a plan, developing a roadmap to success so that you can adapt and succeed in a new culture and in a new work environment. Liliana also gets into detail about networking and how your mindset can affect your success with networking. And also, there's a bit of talk about the belief that you have to be an extrovert to be good at networking and why that's incorrect. And also the importance of being kind to yourself when adapting to a new country or a new culture. Like anything that's worthwhile, adapting to a new culture takes time. So, as I mentioned before, this is the second part of a 2-part interview with Liliana, and the interview itself is recorded, but for everyone who is watching live, you can comment and ask questions in the chat. I encourage you to do so. Liliana should also be in attendance so that she can answer the questions in the chat. And I will, of course, show your comments and questions on the screen and answer them in the chat during the interview. And there will be some time after as well. And as I mentioned, there, of course, will be some time for a bit of talk at the end and a highlight of that group coaching program that I mentioned, not to mention the details for the next episode. So, without further ado, let's get into part 2 of the interview with Liliana Nakamura.
Having traveled to Canada a few times before moving here to live was helpful because I knew things, about the city and the transportation and all the day-to-day things. And I was also pleased to be back in the Western world because even though I adapted to Japan really easily, the culture and the values were too different there, and I didn't want to stay. And when I came to Canada, I thought, okay, this is more natural for me to thrive in this environment rather than the other environment. I really liked being here. Of course, I had a plan in terms of getting a job or studying. I really wanted to study HR in Canada, and I had some thoughts around, okay, like how to get a job and how to start over. So I think that first experience of going to Japan and going to a totally different culture, that also helped because there was so many lessons learned and was very aware of culture shock. And I was sure that the adjustment will take some time, and I was prepared for that.
Aside from dealing specifically with culture shock, what would you say was the biggest lesson that you took from your prior experience?
The biggest lesson was that it's important to meet people who are local, right? And try to really build trust with them and learn ways to build trust and to get to know them and get to know their ways of thinking. And it's not just the lifestyle or it's not just the food, right? It's about how you behave in a day to day and how you conduct yourself in order to be accepted and to be part of that society. When I came to Canada, I came with the idea of really being part of this society. When I went to Japan, I wasn't really into living there for a long time. I saw that as an opportunity to get work experience and get exposed to different cultures or different things. But when I came here, I came with the idea of really settling in and being part of the Canadian society.
So, having that mindset of looking
Mm.
to adapt and become part of the society, it really helped you with that.
Yeah. And thinking back, like how my parents raised me, they were both very integrated into the community there. And it's not just the Japanese community. They said, no, we should go to different groups. And they also emphasized to me, you are Argentinian, so you should go and not stay with the Japanese only, right? Go with all the other people and be part of a society. So I think that's something I took from them.
It seems like your parents gave you some very valuable lessons in that
Mhm.
regard. Coming to Canada and wanting to integrate here and successfully integrating. What kinds of skills have you developed to be able to do that effectively?
One thing I think is the self awareness, which is hard. It's hard to develop that. But I guess being exposed to different cultures and getting bumps in the road, I think that helped me be more self aware and also be open to different types of feedback and different types of thinking. So skills would be probably self-awareness, openness, adaptability, and then trying to develop some understanding for someone who thinks differently. So I think those would be good skills and good things to have in the interpersonal side, to be able to meet people, local people, and be able to have friends in the local society.
That's something actually I really admire about you, is your ability to connect with people and form real bonds with them. I certainly see you do that in Canada and have really helped and mentored a number of people. Networking, actually, I think is one of your strongest skills and one skill that I admire. So, what can you say about that and how that's helped you and helped others?
Networking is something that in North America you should do it very proactively. And it's not just for jobs. We tend to emphasize that networking is for getting a job, which is true, but it's also about getting the right information, or if you have the right connections, people in certain fields or areas, you can ask them, just ask and get firsthand knowledge. Probably I got that in Argentina because the Latin countries are very social and we're always with different gatherings and people and always going and meet new people, and everybody's very welcoming.
I've seen, certainly when talking with a number of newcomers to Canada, a bit of resistance to networking, maybe feeling uncomfortable about it. And to be honest, that was something that I personally, being an introvert, is quite resistant to until I got some good coaching. What kind of advice would you give to someone who is a little resistant to that?
I would say if you want to get ahead or get the right information, networking is one thing that is necessary, right? But in order to get out of that thinking or mindset, I think it's important to change the mindset. And instead of thinking, okay, I have to go to this networking event, get some business cards, or get to know the right people, it's good to think, okay, this is something where I'm curious about new people. I would like to meet them. Just change or reframe your thinking that way and think, okay, I would like to meet new people, maybe grab a coffee sometime, or get to really know the Canadian culture. And that will give you some peace of mind, really. It's not just that you have to go and do it as a mandatory thing, right? So maybe just changing that mindset will help you at first. And then in the practical sense, you can probably practice with a mentor or with a friend on how to introduce yourself, or how you really get comfortable with the mechanics of the networking. And it's same with online networking, right? If you attend a virtual event, you have all the names of the people who are there, connect with them on LinkedIn, or try to really get to know each person. And that will be networking, really. So it's just the mindset and the mechanics, those go hand in hand. And also, I would say you should be kind to yourself and not beat yourself up if something doesn't go well. It's part of the learning process and the adaptation process to a new country.
I think that what you said, particularly about mindset, is so important. It's actually genuinely connecting with people. And also the idea that to network effectively, you have to be an extrovert. I think that's something a lot of people believe.
I think the introverts have a lot of powers or superpowers, right? So we have to learn to value ourselves first. I think we have a lot to offer because introverts tend to listen more actively and have more thoughtful conversations. So we tend to really internalize and think what we're going to say. By the way, I am an introvert too. Some people get shocked when they hear that, but no, it's just about going out and trying new things and using your inner curiosity to get to know people. And also, another point is to think that you have a lot of things to offer, right? A lot of ideas. Newcomers lived in different places and they have a lot of new perspectives, right? Networking is about offering value and helping others, right? Just go with the mindset of, okay, like I'm here to add value. I have to know and ask the right questions to see how I can help the other person. Because introverts tend to look at the other person and try to help. So that also helps them in networking.
All of these skills about networking and being an introvert is another type of adaptation, and being able to adapt and listening is an essential skill in adaptation. What you're saying is really, I think, is a critical lesson for anyone who's looking to adapt to another culture. So, if you were going to give one piece of advice to someone who is moving into another country, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh, that's hard.
It's not meant to be an easy
Yeah,
question.
yeah. Oh, it's a lot of things, but I would say that moving to a different country is a big change. And change is actually a transition, right? It's not just one thing and a one time event. It's part of a transition, right? It's a process. Some people take maybe a month or 2 months and they're more or less adapted. Some people take a couple of years and they need that time. So I would say the best advice would be to be gentle with yourself and to be aware that it's a process and it's a transition and you have to take your time, right? And if you're moving here with your family and there's a lot of implications there, everybody will go through that transition. So just be gentle and patient, right? And not everything will be easy. Be aware of that and trust that process because that's how you can also keep up in terms of your mental health and your overall health.
I think that's really important. Everyone's journey is different, and being
Mhm.
kind to yourself is important, and not comparing yourselves to other people. We all have our own journey. You just compare yourself
Mhm.
to how you were before. It's the only person you should be comparing yourself to, I think, in any kind of situation where you can grow. So thank you for saying that too. And one question I like to ask is, what's one question I haven't asked you that you want me to ask?
See, that's another difficult one. I don't know. Sometimes I get the question about leadership because I teach leadership courses as part of my job, and I did that prior to moving here. And in Japan, I used to be a facilitator delivering courses. And some people have asked me, is leadership different in different countries? My answer is that the core leadership traits are not that different. It's actually a lot of things translate across cultures. So I believe that leadership is about listening and trying to really understand the other person, having empathy and responding in a respectful manner. So that's really something that goes in any culture, right? And then it's other traits around how to empower others or how to form partnerships or how to coach. There are some differences in the mechanics on maybe what's expected in different countries or cultures. But overall, like those traits are the same. And I've seen the same across cultures when teaching those courses. So that would be my answer.
It's been wonderful talking to you and being able to have this opportunity to share what I already know about you. You've done a number of things to help others, as you mentioned, the facilitator, cultural advisor, and you do a lot of mentoring. You also do some writing.
I always like to write. And of course, I write in 3 different languages. So Spanish primarily, English, and Japanese. I do have a Medium account. If anyone wants to go and check my articles, I talk about job search and how to maintain your motivation, right? Those are in English. I also volunteer for a number of nonprofit organizations in Toronto. Most of them help newcomers to Canada. And I can mention Latin Project Management Network. There's also Immigrant Writers Association for writers. Then I do webinars and workshops for other nonprofits like Culture Link and JBS Toronto. So you can probably find me in one of those events. And I'm also always active in the community. I'm part of the Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council, where I collaborate with other organizations. I'm really happy to help others related to any mentoring or adjusting to Canada. And the best way is to find me through LinkedIn. Please mention that you saw me here so that I have that reference in mind. I'm really looking forward to getting in contact with you.
And I'm sure that a lot of people who are watching or listening will definitely want to get in touch with you, not just newcomers, but anyone who wants to get comfortable with connecting with people. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. And so that concludes part 2 of the interview with Liliana Nakamura. And yeah, I'm just so happy and excited to be able to share what she's been doing over the years that she's been here in Canada. We've been here for over 10 years now, and I really admire what she has been able to do in terms of starting over, connecting with people, and acting as a bridge and a mentor for other people. She's really inspiring, and I see that we've got a number of people watching the show live. We've got Paul Duke out in Vancouver, who is the host of Hard Boiled English. I think I incorrectly called him Teacher Paul the other time. The name of the show is Hard Boiled English, which he live streams on YouTube. If I've got any details wrong, I'm sure Paul can, of course, comment in the chat. And yes, Paul mentions a very interesting fact, which is, of course, true in the news recently, that I heard that the Canadian government is planning to bring in 500,000 newcomers a year going forward. Does this represent new opportunities for coaching? That is an excellent question, Paul. I would say yes, because obviously coming to a new culture, a new country is a major transition. And anytime that there is a transition or you want to be able to adapt successfully, whether it's to a new country, a new culture, whether it's a corporate culture, national culture, coaching can always be beneficial. To have someone act as a mirror and be able to help build accountability and help you to focus on goals and steps that you can take. And adapting to a culture is no less than that. Many people, when they come to a new country and come to Canada, focus on finding a job. And of course, obviously, that is essential. There are many resources out there for finding a job. But once you get that job, it doesn't stop there. You, of course, need to adapt to the culture. that's in the workplace, which can be very different than what you might be used to in another country, or even transferring from one corporation to another in the same country. And having a plan, building your awareness, which is again one thing that I do with my clients, is building that awareness really is essential, because until you know what you don't know, you can't grow, essentially. So, excellent question, Paul. Very well said. Um, and that, of course, leads me into mentioning the group coaching program that I mentioned earlier, which is something that I will be launching in 2023, specifically aimed towards newcomers coming to Canada and finding and building their pathway to success in the workplace. Again, as I mentioned, there are many resources that are available to help newcomers to find a job, but having that chance to build that cultural awareness and learn how to adapt really is the focus of this group coaching program. And being able to share the collective wisdom of everyone that's in that program is my goal. And that's one thing I really love about group coaching. One-to-one coaching can be extremely beneficial. And I obviously have one-to-one clients, and I love doing that work. But being able to share that collective wisdom of people who are going through similar circumstances, there's just a synergy there. And the results can be incredible. So if you want to find out more about those details of that group coaching program launching in 2023, I encourage you to contact me, Hiyaku Coaching, at info@thriveglobally.ca. You can, of course, reach out to me through LinkedIn as well, and we can have a chat and conversation. And perhaps you might have an opportunity to shape how that program looks in the future. So just going to take a quick look at some of the other comments. Yes, thank you very much, Paul. And of course, I should mention not only Paul is in the chat, but you saw a comment earlier from Byron. I think, yes, Byron, who is currently in Madrid, and I know spent a number of years in Tokyo, and he's going to be transitioning over to Montreal in sometime soon. So, yeah, another exciting transition. Again, full of possibilities. So, speaking of possibilities and transitions into workplace, I want to mention my next guest who's coming up starting next week, another first part of a two-part interview with Doris Haddad, who is as you can see, she is a master certified career counselor who's based in Ottawa. She has extensive experience working with newcomers. So if you are someone who is considering working in Canada and moving to Canada and working in Canada, or you're already in Canada and you are having some challenges, or you want to really find out what your career path possibilities could be, I really encourage you to tune in next week to see that interview with Doris Haddad. And I would say that, again, she also has some extensive experience from her time growing up in Ottawa. So we'll get into that. We'll also talk about, obviously, her pathway to becoming a career counselor and a lot of the tips, some of the most essential tips that she gets to her clients. And you can get them from watching the show. So I encourage you to tune in. And of course, you can watch these episodes on demand on the YouTube channel and also see them. You can find them on LinkedIn Live, of course, as well, but it's easier maybe to find them all in the same place if you go to the YouTube channel. So again, I want to say thank you for tuning in for episode 3 of Intercultural Insiders. And I'm looking forward to continuing this journey with you to new cultures and new awareness and new understanding. So thank you very much.